Want to be sure that you don't miss a single video or blog post? Hit the bell icon on the channel page and hit save to enable your notifications. Be sure to select the notification setting that fits you best. Are you not a fan or don't want to receive notifications? Just jump straight to your subscriptions page to view the latest videos from your favorite creators and channels. You can learn more about how to support your favorite creators and bloggers here. We'll also provide a link in the description below. Thank you for joining me for this fourth episode in our Building a Debt-Free Home video series. In case this is the first video you find, there's a few videos prior to this. You'll want to take a look at those. They create a lot of context. I'll link to that playlist over here. We first discussed why it took us over a year and a half to start building our home. Next, we jumped into the topic of finances and shared a lot of our financial strategy that's going to help us hopefully build this home debt-free. Now we'd like to jump into a couple of different topics, starting with skills and experience. Alyssa and I really want to build our own home. Our goal with this project isn't just to come out of the project with a house to live in. We'd like to come away with this project with not only the skills, but the confidence to build a home in the future on our own. It's so early in this project, it's hard to even believe that we're thinking about building a different house. But we want to keep that door open, and what better way to learn all of the skills you need to have to build a house than to build a house? Alyssa and I have talked about living more remotely or living in different areas, so we'd like to really maximize this project and come away with a lot more skills than we have today. One of the big problems there is that between Alyssa and I, we don't cumulatively have all of the skills necessary to see a project through from beginning to end. I've actually been involved in numerous construction projects and different phases of construction, but I've never been with a project from beginning to end. And so this project is the first time I'll hopefully navigate that entire course. Alyssa is completely green to building, so she's going to have to absorb the most information she can from this one project. Only a fool would jump into a project of this scope with somebody who they don't understand. Most people who build homes together, well, they're all contractors or they've been in the trade for a little while. It's pretty rare to bring somebody onto the job site who's never built a house before. And when you do, you don't give them very much responsibility until they've proven themselves. Well, if Alyssa and I want to build this home reasonably ourselves, we need to make sure that we can do it. And that's not something that we were confident in when we first started this project. We needed a little bit of practice. We needed to work together to understand what skills Alyssa possesses. And I'm not talking about can she put a screw in or cut a board. Who is Alyssa? Who is she in the context of building a home? Who am I? What skills do I have? How can those be complementary to the project? So instead of just jumping in blindly and assuming, well, you have 2 arms, 2 legs, you can work and I can work, we can do this. We felt like that would be pretty foolish. So we've spent quite a bit of time working on other projects to get to know each other, to really get familiar with ourselves and say with honesty, I can do this. I'm not very good at that, but I can really bring a lot to the project if I stay within this scope. I want to be completely transparent here. Alyssa doesn't have a tremendous amount of construction experience, and I didn't know if I have what it takes to do a project of this scope with somebody who has so much to learn. I'm just being honest that it's not only taxing to build a home, but think about the amount of energy and effort that Alyssa has to put forth to learn. It's exhausting, right? Think about if you went to college or you've ever had to learn a completely new job from scratch, you didn't know anything about it. Think about how exhausting that is. Okay, so that's taxing on Alyssa. And then the amount of things that I have to teach on top of doing the job. This is not just cut a few boards, put a few nails in, put some trusses up, put the windows in, and we've got ourselves a house. For the sake of this video series, most couples aren't going to come into a project like this like, we're a construction crew, watch out, here we come. Instead, it's going to be like, man, I don't know who you are and I don't know who I am, but we're about to find out. Alyssa and I are just a little more deliberate than that. The difference between a weekend project and building a house is the overall conditions that exist when taking on a project that has such a large scope. Most couples can survive a weekend project. Maybe they want to build a bench or put some tables together, maybe start on a gazebo or something like that. In the summer, days are long, so there's not as much of a rush to get projects done. During the winter though, or in the fall, as the days start to get shorter, there's a lot of pressure from the time you get out of bed to the time you got to hang things up. You got to be moving. And that creates a lot of pressure around a task. You start to learn how each other works under pressure. Another thing you might not think about, but as the days get colder, well, it gets colder. How do you or your spouse deal with cold temperatures? Are you prepared? Do you understand what it means to work in snow, rain, sleet, hail, high wind? These are things you might not know about yourself, and they really matter if you're going to try to survive a home build. What about during the summer when it's warm, or should I say blistering hot? It turns out our property is scorching in the summer. Maybe 2 hours, 3 hours in the afternoon you can bear to be outside. How do you and your spouse deal with those things? Those are extremes, and they're realistic because once you start a project, pretty slim chance you're going to be able to stop just because you're uncomfortable. In the end, Alyssa and I put the highest value on our relationship, not on the house. Next, there's the matter of education. While I have some background with construction, and I understand the project generally from beginning to end, some of the basic steps that need to take place, it's the details where I'm weak. And when we're discussing this project, I want to feel like Alyssa and I are on the same page. In lieu of getting a job building houses for Alyssa and I, we've decided to turn to digital resources, physical books, and other mentors. For example, we invested heavily in a series of books that we have been reading passively over the last year, every chance we get. A lot of times our backpack is completely chock full of books, and anytime we have a down moment within reason, we try to grab one and just start studying. We have been trying to apply some of that information, as I mentioned earlier. We've been doing a lot of different projects. Something as simple as a steel square, there's an entire book on the subject. My dad actually found the predecessor to this book and this guy at a yard sale. And I'll tell you what, I never knew you could do so much with a steel square. If you have a good steel square, you don't even need a calculator. Unfortunately, because you can't ever just fixate on one aspect of construction, because you want the building to be somewhat holistic, you have to sort of consider all factors in order to make a reasonably good design. We couldn't just study framing or roofing. We had to study plumbing and electrical, passive solar. We had to study a lot of different things to make sure that we understand how to design the house. As I mentioned in the finance video series, the type of building to build is actually one of the first questions you're going to have to answer before you can decide what path of education to go down, because every type of building has very different fundamentals that go into it. We'll probably talk about this more later in another part of this video series, but part of the education journey is getting some hands-on experience. As I mentioned a moment ago, we've done some of our own projects. We actually built a timber frame battery box. It was primitive, but we took a tree that had fallen over in a windstorm. We used our chainsaw mill, we cut posts and beams out of it, and then we cut the joinery mostly by hand and assembled it into our battery box. This little project helped Alyssa and I to understand better what is timber framing, generally how does it work, and is it something that her and I can even do. Next, we wanted to get hands-on experience with a full workshop type project. So we signed up for a workshop in Maine in April. We're excited to actually get involved in building a 24 by 24 post and beam structure. We feel like it's money well spent because we're not just trying to get a house. We're trying to come away with the skills to build a home. So this is just one of those investments in touching it and seeing other people work and learning to work with our own hands. We're excited to document that. Stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some videos coming out of that project. When you pick a building style that has a strong community around it, you're going to find that there's a phenomenal amount of resources available to help you build your own structure. And this is part of education, especially if you really want to learn how to build. Next up is tools. When we arrived here, we had some tools. My grandpa was actually a contractor who worked in the Navy in World War II and built many municipal buildings and homes. So some of those tools trickled down. My dad also worked in that trade for a time, and so some of his tools trickled down. But I'll be honest with you, we have a lot of tools that we need. Part of that journey has been reading books and finding out what the professionals recommend. Tools that you need and tools that you could probably live without, but if you had them, they'd be really nice. Next comes finding quality tools. If you want to run down to the local hardware store and pick up whatever's on the shelf, well, in modern America, you can do that. But it's not a good investment in quality tools, which if you want to build a quality home, you really want to focus on having the right tools and understanding how to use them. When we first started on this journey, we actually invested in a large Stihl 660 chainsaw. Part of the reason we did that is because we wanted to experiment with chainsaw milling. We used our deck project to play with this technology a little bit, to kind of test it, have fun with it, but also check it for viability. It was something that we wanted to play around with and test. And guess what? We got a beautiful deck out of it, and Alyssa and I had a lot of fun making our own lumber. Because we're passionate about building a timber frame, there is an assortment of tools that we need to get in order to do that well. Part of attending the workshop is learning those tools more carefully. But we've needed time to kind of research those tools and understand what it is that we're even looking at. Of course, time becomes a factor here too. So if you need all of your tools today, well, get your wallet out. You're going to have to pay a premium price. But we've been kind of carefully looking for these tools at estate sales, garage sales, on eBay, Craigslist, and other places, hoping to discover quality tools at a great price. One of the best opportunities we stumbled upon is we needed a concrete mixer, and we found an older gentleman that had one. In talking to him, he actually plans to sell his entire estate, which means he's getting rid of all the tools that he used to build his house. We're waiting patiently to capitalize on that, and hopefully we'll come away with a big chunk of the tools that we need to work on our house. Another tip that we've received from several experienced builders is be cautious of power tools. Don't be afraid of them, but know their place. And understand that for newer construction workers, power tools can create problems that you might not foresee. Learning to use hand tools first and learning how to use them well will make you more effective with a power tool. If you jump straight to power tools, you're probably going to make mistakes that might be really costly. That does it for this episode. We've covered skills, practice, education, and tools. Hopefully you found something super beneficial. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.